John Coffey. John Coffey is the mysterious character from the Green Mile movie, someone almost all of us would wish to have in real life. Despite his imposing size, he has a calm, agreeable, and timid personality, coupled with mysterious powers, making him an unforgettable death row inmate. The Green Mile film is actually an adaptation of a novel by Stephen King. Although Stephen King was repeatedly asked where he drew his inspiration from when writing the book, he left these questions unanswered every time. However, in an interview in 2001, he remarked, "I narrated a miracle, thereby sparking curiosity in people's minds. Now, we will unveil the mystery of this book, and consequently the film, exploring the miraculous events and characters described by the author." The film is set in 1935, in a prison block reserved for death row inmates. One day, a new condemned man arrives at the prison. His crimes are horrendous. He's been found guilty of raping and murdering 2 young girls, and is sentenced to die in the electric chair. This man's name is John Coffey. The guards are astonished when they see him, because although John Coffey is the largest man they've ever seen, he has the demeanor of a gentle child. A strong bond forms between head guard Paul and John Coffey. Head guard Paul has been suffering from a urinary tract infection. John Coffey heals him by touching him with his hand. This mysterious man has a miraculous ability to heal people's illnesses. Head guard Paul investigates this mysterious man's past. Intriguingly, John Coffey seems to have descended from the sky. There is no trace of his past. Especially the complete absence of any trace of such a large and black man in those years is impossible. This man is like a miracle sent by God. In a 2001 interview with an unknown psychology magazine, author Stephen King responded to a question about how the character John Coffey came into being by saying, "I didn't create him. He was already there." The journalist was taken aback and asked what he meant. That's when the intrigue began. I'd gone to visit an elderly relative at a nursing home. There I met a man who was 108 years old. Despite his age, he was very vigorous and healthy. He piqued my interest, and when I got to know him, he told me he was a former prison guard who had worked on Block E during the 1930s, where death row inmates spent their last days. When Stephen King asked him how he managed to stay so healthy and strong, the man didn't want to answer and began to cry. Then he shared his story. One day, a mysterious man was brought to the facility where he was working. The man was large, black, and had a childlike personality. The elderly man in the nursing home told Stephen King that when they met this big black man, they never believed he could commit a murder, because he was a miracle from God, he said. The elderly man explained that one day the condemned man took his hand, gave him a part of himself. That's why he had a long and healthy life. After hearing this story, author Stephen King was deeply moved and began to investigate, coming across astonishing facts. In 1935, in an unnamed prison, there was a black man who was executed in the electric chair, about whom no information was available regarding his past. The man's name was John. Since his last name was unknown, it was entered into the official documents of the time with a question mark. Equally surprising was that the elderly man Stephen King met in the nursing home was indeed the chief guard at that prison and had participated in the execution of John, known in the film as John Coffey. In his research, Stephen King also found that this guard, along with his colleagues who participated in the execution, resigned from their jobs. The journalist, astonished, asks, "So, did the character John Coffey actually live and perform such miracles?" Stephen King replies, "Why not? All the holy books are filled with stories of people who performed miracles. One of those people could have been John Coffey." Stephen King then transcribed this event into a novel titled The Green Mile within 6 months, and the novel was quickly adapted into a film. In fact, the elderly guard Stephen King met in the nursing home is also presented to us in the film. Because at the beginning and end of the film, we see the prison's chief guard in his old age, narrating these mysterious events he experienced in 1935 to a woman in the nursing home. The film has other surprising and unexplained aspects. Now you're going to be astonished. John Coffey's cell number is 4. The director really throws this number in our face. So what does the number 4 signify? In the film, 4 kind-hearted guards fight for this man with mysterious powers, who can heal and read people's thoughts. There is also an evil devil-like guard named Percy. So the director associates the 4 kind-hearted guards with the 4 archangels, while presenting the evil, merciless guard Percy as the devil. John Coffey, in this context, is likened to the prophet Jesus, as the evil-hearted guard representing the devil opposes him. The other 4 kind-hearted guards fight for John Coffey's goodness. And what's even more surprising is that one of the most significant attributes of Prophet Jesus was his ability to heal people with his touch, take away their illness, and even resurrect the dead. John Coffey's most significant miracle, just like Prophet Jesus, is his ability to heal people's illnesses with his touch. And again, like Prophet Jesus, there's no information, no record of his past, no family, nor any trace of his childhood or life to be found. If you still find these similarities not convincing enough, pay attention to this. At the end of the movie, John Coffey is executed, just like Jesus was. And just as the public witnessed the execution of Prophet Jesus, people watched John Coffey's execution. Before his execution, John Coffey's friend, guard Paul, whom he calls Boss, asks him if he wants a priest. But John Coffey, with a stern expression, declines a priest, stating that prayers from the 4 guards are sufficient for him. This mirrors how Prophet Jesus in the Bible showed anger towards religious leaders and called them the most corrupt individuals in society. Jesus, too, in the Bible, mentioned that angels would pray and even weep as he was crucified. As John Coffey is executed with people watching them, these 4 guards are also drowned in tears. Before his execution, John Coffey requests a variety of foods for his last meal, similar to how Prophet Jesus requested various foods on his last evening. The Last Supper of Jesus is one of the most significant symbols in Christianity and has been immortalized in a painting by Leonardo da Vinci. The director conveys the settings of these events in the film by frequently showing us city signs. Author Stephen King states that God grants miraculous abilities to some individuals, and the Green Mile's John Coffey is just such a person. However, like every good person who comes along, he too is ostracized and killed by society. In the nursing home, the elderly guard who had reached the age of 108 shared with the Green Mile author Stephen King some events that did not make it into the film. John was a man who feared the dark and spoke very little. When we, the other guards, discussed among ourselves, it seemed as though he could sense and hear it. would tell us things that no one outside of the four guards knew about our conversations. He was an incredible man. Once, during the execution of another man whom we thought was innocent, I saw John among the spectators, crying. But John was supposed to be in his cell. Thinking it was just my imagination, I disregarded it. We proceeded with the execution. Afterward, the other guards came to me and told me what John had seen here. We immediately ran down what we called the Green Mile, the path the condemned prisoners walked, to John's cell. He was sleeping in his cell, but all four of us were sure we had seen him in the execution area. When we reached his cell, John said to me, "Boss, he was a good man." Me and the other guards were very surprised by this event. But since John's arrival at this prison, we had witnessed so many miraculous incidents that nothing could surprise us anymore. In 2001, an interview with Stephen King, the author of The Green Mile, was published across 4 pages in Unknown Money Psychology magazine. However, due to the 9/11 attacks occurring the same week, public and media attention was entirely diverted to this terrorist act, causing the interview and the stories King shared about John Coffey to not attract much interest from the public. Consequently, the interview was relegated to the dusty shelves of the magazine. The final piece of the story that remained in the shadows concerns the murder charge against John Coffey. In the story relayed to Stephen King by the 108-years-old former guard, detailed information about the murder committed by this enormous black prisoner John was not included. However, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the character John Coffey was imprisoned for the accusation of raping and killing 2 young girls. The question that needs to be asked is, could this part of the story be entirely a product of Stephen King's creative mind? Let me tell you about another story, my friends. George Stinney Jr., the year 1944, South Carolina. This 14-year-old black boy was accused of killing 2 white girls. 11-year-old Betty June Binnicker and 8-year-old Mary Emma Thames disappeared while riding their bicycles and were later found dead. George Stinney Jr. was interrogated about the murders and, without a lawyer, provided a confession that he allegedly admitted to, of which he had no knowledge. Left to his fate in a solitary cell with only a Bible in his hand. His sister swore he was with her at the time of the incident, but this testimony was never considered. His trial lasted only 2 hours, and the jury was entirely white. All testimonies in his favor were ignored. Detectives claimed George killed the girls with a 42-pound iron bar, an almost impossible feat for a child weighing just 90 pounds. The verdict was delivered, and the electric chair was prepared. At the age of 14, George was executed in front of a white crowd only. The story feels eerily familiar, doesn't it? There's an undeniable similarity between the murder accusations placed upon the character John Coffey and George Stinney Jr. But this goes beyond mere similarity. The accusations are almost exactly the same. Although Stephen King has not made any statement regarding this matter, there are speculations that the story of John Coffey might have been inspired by the tragic fate of George Stinney Jr. But why? Why might King have designed the story of his character Coffey along the same lines as George Stinney Jr.'s story, which has been left in a dark corner of history? This thought suggests that King intended to convey a deeper message, perhaps related to justice, beyond just being a storyteller. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more.